Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is B. Surendra, and I'm the editor of Climate Control Middle East magazine, a magazine that has been covering refrigeration-related issues over the years and looking intensely at the food industry, the healthcare industry, the pharmaceutical industries. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to welcome all of you here this morning for what I do believe will be an interesting session on storage and handling issues from a refrigeration perspective. Thank you. Just to give a quick background, I have been privileged over the years in being able to interact with food professionals. And during these interactions, I've seen the passion that these people bring to the table in terms of food safety and also, of course, profitability, because that's part of that's a commercial side of things. And we have today an interesting gathering of such professionals who are going to join us in the round table. And Stephanie will be introducing them to you. And I just hope that the discussions are as vibrant as these people have been sharing with me on an individual basis. So what we are going to be discussing today are various end-user issues, issues that concern retailers, wholesalers, and those in the food processing industries. And as based on what I have witnessed, there seem to be quite a lot of end-user issues. I've heard people talk of the need for reliable refrigeration components, of good installation practices, good consultancy, good contracting, jobs, and also training. Very importantly, I mean, a lot has been discussed on the need for good training of their own personnel from those who manufacture and supply the equipment. And these are just a few of the issues that we have, been exposed to. There are several more, and I hope all these do come up for discussion today. And so we are going to have this roundtable discussion, which is going to last for 4 hours. Believe it or not, yes, 4 hours, but there seem to be that many issues for discussion. We're going to be listening to a series of presentations by one of the foremost experts, refrigeration experts in the region. And so he's going to be bringing several issues to the table from a purely refrigeration perspective. And so that's how day one is going to be proceeding. And tomorrow we turn the table over to the refrigeration component suppliers, the manufacturers and suppliers. And I hope that they are able to listen intently to all that's going to be discussed today, because it's my fond hope that tomorrow they'll be able to offer specific solutions to the challenges that are going to be raised today. And so that should also be interesting. And in the post-lunch session tomorrow, we have something that is quite interesting. I say this because I've had a sort of sneak preview of what's to come, and that's we're going to be talking on refrigerated transportation, and believe me, it's going to be very interesting. And so I hope all of you are able to spare 2 days. I'm much appreciative of the fact that you're so willingly giving your time to this very important event, because food safety is of paramount importance to society. Before I conclude, it's my duty and privilege to thank our sponsors. And we have our bronze sponsors, Danfoss and Carrier Transicold. We have our silver sponsors, Emerson. Our event partner, this is N-Cube Solutions. And I also thank members of the media, some of whom have showed up already and some who are expected as we go along. And thank you, and I hope you have several takeaways by sundown tomorrow. And thank you.
Now I would just like to introduce the roundtable participants. We have Mr. Farhat Saporta, who's the maintenance manager from Emirat, and who will also be a moderator on the roundtable. We also have Reza Afzali, Technical Supplies and Service Co. We have Ravi Chandran, who's the General Manager for Epicure Catering Services and Health Factory. We have Ms. Lorraine Hughes, who's the Technical Manager of FoodPoint, a branch of Emirates in-flight catering. We'll also have Sanjay KC, Section Manager from Carrefour, Rakesh Kumar, Technical Manager from Barakat Quality Plus, AC Sasi Kumar, Director of Engineering at the Address Hotel here at the Dubai Marina, Ranjit Singh, Technical Manager from Lulu Hypermarket, MK Group, Richard Sprenger, who we'd like to welcome from the UK, who's the Chairman of Highfield, and Mr. Bashir Hassan Yusuf, the Coordinator of the Dubai Municipality, and Domingo Perez, Al-Hawadi Engineering. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoy the discussion.
I would like everyone to introduce themselves so that we know what the competencies are, so that then we can take forward the roundtable discussion. I'll start with you, Mr.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, for the organisers. Really appreciate the opportunity for refrigeration engineers and food safety specialists, and I understand that there is maybe a 50-50 split, I don't know, between the two, but that's good because we both depend on each other. My involvement with food safety, which is my specialism, has been since now for about 40 years. I started as an enforcement officer in the UK, and I was a director of environmental health, specialising in food safety for 12 of those years. I joined Highfield, which is a leading company involved with the provision of food safety training material. So I particularly specialise in developing food safety training material, and since then we've been involved with qualifications, training and so on. So that's my expertise, and I'm looking forward to a very good session, listening to all of you and learning from all of you about the problems and the solutions that you can give to us specialists as well. Thank you.
My name is Ravi Chandran. I'm the General Manager of APQ Catering Services and Health Factory. I think I'm the only non-technical guy on this table, but I have 20 years of experience in the food service industry, and I've seen the good and bad of refrigeration and experienced it, and I would like to share some of those points today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, I am Ranjit Singh. I am working Lulu MK. This Dubai municipality implemented this hygienic models. We also participated before I was in modern bakery. I studied from there. After that, now I am working in Lulu MK group. I am following that things. I know very well how to handle boardroom and display how to handle. I know. If any doubt I have to know, I will ask our police.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Food safety postgraduate as well. No experience with engineering aspects themselves, but indirect experience, of course. I'll be giving you an insight into likely the practical impact of refrigeration issues with respect to food safety. It's exciting to see Bashir and Richard and Ravi and people who we work with, either as suppliers or as legislative, or who give us reference at this table. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot today. Thank you.
My name is Bashir Yusuf. I work as food safety expert at the municipality. My background is food processing. I have a postgraduate in food processing. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers for a very timely issue, because it fits with our strategic vision to bring in all concerned parties to discuss issues of mutual interest. And we at the municipality believe in this kind of partnership, because we cannot do everything alone. And now this timely issue of chilling or food chain issue is very timely in the sense that now we put it in the what we call our smart section, and we put food control as our top priority. I mean, temperature control as our top priority, because through that control you ensure most of food safety. Because if you give organisms the time at the right temperature, you give it all it needs, because the food is already there. So it's very important that we concentrate on this kind of point, or the critical point in our process, in order to supply safe food. Thank you.
Good morning. I just want to thank the opportunity which the organizer provided for me. My name is Reza Afzali. I'm working for a company, TSSE, Technical Supply and Services Company. We are actually producer of the insulated panel. We are in the market for a long time. My duty and services is electromechanical. I take care of the refrigeration, or mostly part of refrigeration, and refrigerated transport. It will be a really good opportunity for me if I can do helpful too. Thank you very much.
Thanks to everybody for the introduction. As you can see that we have a healthy mix of everybody represented, right from top to bottom of the food chain. Right from the educator, Mr. Richard, the student, who now manages the business. We have a supermarket manager. We have people from the flight catering business. We have the regulator, and we have the supplier. And I am, as a facilities engineer, try to be as neutral as possible and try to bring all issues to the table so that we bring in a healthy discussion table. Once again, I'd like to emphasize that if anybody wants to say anything, please put your hands up and just grab the nearest mic, and you can have your input. It's just going to be a free-flowing discussion, and we encourage everybody to participate. And I'm going to watch who's not going to participate. He's not going to be having lunch today. So guys, you got to watch out. Just for the participants on the table and everybody else, this is a singer's mic. I told this, I'm not a singer, but the sound is much better audible if you actually keep it next to you. It doesn't work, as you notice. All right, so we begin with right from the agenda that I have, and this is quite flexible. We want Mr. Richard to actually have a outsider's perspective. So he's been here for the last 1 year, I believe. We'd like to have Richard actually give a Alta Vista look to the industry. Please, Richard.
Okay, thank you for that surprise. Nothing's been prepared, so I'll have to think in terms of refrigeration issues that are different in Dubai. I think one of the interesting things is recently looking at frozen food, that the regulations generally throughout the world require that food should be stored and delivered at -18 degrees Celsius in a catering or in a retail situation and during transport. Obviously, for the storage of frozen food in wholesale suppliers, it can be as low as -30. Yeah? But it's interesting that and maybe Bashir can comment on the practical way that this is being accepted as a temperature in Dubai, whereby if the food is frozen solid, then that will be acceptable. Now, my own view is that I don't have any problem with that, because you've got to have a look at the practicalities of the situation. And one of the practicalities is, obviously, if you're faced with something like a turkey or a chicken, how do you take the temperature for the majority of the smaller premises? Now, if you've got packs of food, then you can do an in-between the pack check very easily. But it's not easy. If you've got a probe thermometer to take the temperature of something like a round ball, that's one of the issues. And therefore, for the smaller premises to be able to say, look, if it's frozen solid, it'll be fine, then put it in the freezer and make sure that the temperature then is -18. So that's one of the things that's different. I've never come across that anywhere in the world, but that is something that is happening in Dubai. I think the other issue would be, for me, that I would like some debate on from the food safety point of view, and perhaps the engineers as well, is whether we should be looking at refrigeration, and obviously in the hot chain as well, but concentrating on the refrigeration, whether we should be using probe thermometers or infrared thermometers, and when we should be using them. Obviously there's lots of issues. Do you want other people to come in, or do you want me to?
No, please.
Yeah? So, I've always been concerned about the potential abuse of taking temperatures because of the risks of cross-contamination and so on, and because of the fact that people often aren't trained as to how and where to take the temperatures. And that's another issue for the engineers. When you're checking the temperatures of refrigerators, where are they taken? So that's another issue we could perhaps discuss, as what people feel in terms of the monitoring. Monitoring records, that's another issue. Again, I'm sure these are all side issues to the engineers, but certainly to the hygiene people. The records, and quite often people will say you should be taking the temperatures 3 times a day. Morning, sometime in the midday, and on last thing at night. Now, my view on that is you may wish to record the temperature 3 times a day, but I like to see the temperatures being checked every time the unit, from the display on the unit, every time it's used, and then appropriate action being taken. And that's something else we can discuss. So it doesn't have to be recorded, but if there's a problem, then obviously you can investigate it immediately. So it's the way you deal with that, the way you deal with records. The problems, and we could spend a long time talking about the problems of records, and shall we say, the creative way that people can actually produce records. You know, sometimes a month in advance, which is quite interesting, something to do. So record keeping is something else, and I'm sure that we've all got views on record keeping. The training of staff is obviously something I'm very interested in, and I suspect when you're talking about training, you will be talking about training people to get the best out of the equipment as an engineer, how it should be serviced, how it should be used, and so on. I'm interested in the training as to how it's used to avoid cross-contamination, how it's used so it's not overloaded, so the temperatures rise. It's not just, you might have the best equipment in the world, but if it's loaded incorrectly, then you could have a problem and you're going to get high temperatures. So that's another issue that people might like to comment on. The training of staff to actually load it. And not only the staff within the organisation, some smaller premises, my understanding is that the suppliers load the refrigerators. So they bring along the food, and obviously they're interested in maximising the amount of food that they sell to, say, a supermarket. These are the smaller supermarkets. So they load they load up the refrigeration units and overload them, and quite often we've seen pictures where the food has been stored at the very edge, if you like, of the refrigeration, certainly outside the load line. So that is another issue where you as engineers may, as I said, have really good equipment that is efficient and working well, but if you don't train the people how to use and stack the refrigerator or the chiller, then you're going to get a problem. So those are just several issues that I see from a refrigeration point of view.
Thanks, Richard. I think Richard has touched upon so many issues, right from the training aspect to the regulation to temperature measurements, and there has to be a practical solution, as Richard mentioned, to all this. I would like Mr. Bashir to actually give his input as to temperature measurements. What is Dubai municipality standards of temperature measurements? And what Richard mentioned was, we are actually looking at only at the end product being stored. And suppose a frozen product is supposed to be kept at -18. And that's when actually the supermarket people would actually measure the temperature in whichever way they feel is the right way, whether it's by a probe thermometer, as Richard mentioned, it could be infrared. But what about the food chain? I mean, right from manufacturing, like what Epicure does. I mean, our temperature is measured and kept through the transportation when they're actually moved in refrigerated trucks. Is record being kept? Maybe the food is damaged or spoiled in transit, and it's not fair to the supermarket to be blamed in case he keeps the temperature at -18 and then the food is spoiled and the customer takes it home and there is an unfortunate case of food poisoning. Who is to be accountable, and how do we actually set up a system to prevent this from happening again? The whole issue is not about assigning blame. It's all about making a system which works for the benefit of the end user. Everybody knows food poisoning is an horrendous story. We just had an issue last month, I believe, in Abu Dhabi, where around 500 laborers were, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people having food poisoning at one time. And I don't want to go into other issues, but I like Dubai municipalities input into these issues which Richard mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to start with, now I think Sterling are here. Probably their sale went up in the last 2 or 3 years. I think Sterling and the likes. Because we made a strategic partnership with some of the vehicle registration companies. I think 3 of them now work in operation, and they are approved by RTA. So we have enacted a regulation which was agreed many years back. Now we have mandatory registration for all food vehicles, whether they are transporting chilled food, frozen food, or dry foods. And we have the regulation which was updated also. And since 3 years back, we started stop contracting these companies to take care of the registration. Now I think the next step will be enforcing these kind of laws through our inspectors and through RTA inspectors, and also probably the police could work in that. So we are thinking of involving these other control authorities. This is to make sure that, like we said, the chain is intact, because it's not useful to throw blames. We are here to ensure food safety. Although accountability is very important for us, and probably for the courts and everything, but we have to make sure that we do our parts in order to make sure everybody does his or her responsibility. So that is probably for the transportation. And now I think some of you might have seen this book, which is called PIC, Person in Charge book, which is published by Highfield. And we have another one, same concept, published by PSI. This has put down or simplified our regulations regarding many issues. Transportation is important, and we have put that in here. And we have not only in Dubai, we'll have PIC for importers. So we also concerned of the transportation through the ocean or at the country of origin. So we just wanted to make sure that, like I said, the food chain is intact with no loopholes or cuts in between. So we need to
Yes, please. I was actually interested in, this is the first time actually, I have actually heard about PIC in the books. Where we come from, we actually take the regulations from the food inspectors. I believe there are some set of regulations on the website, but a handbook of this sort is not only very good, it should be advertised and given, ideally free of cost, or maybe a sponsor could actually absorb a part of the cost and give it. Actually, it's the first time, as an end user, I'm actually looking at a book with regulations. So I'd like you to...
Yeah, actually it's not free of cost, first of all, because it's a program.
No, ideally I'd like it free of cost.
I know, but because, see, this is a new initiative by the municipality. I was just talking to one of the speakers before the presentation. I mean, there's another emirate which has some sort of what we call different regulation regarding receiving of foods or displaying of foods. So we like to make sure that our end users have the same concept as us. That's why we brought in companies like Highfield and DSI in order to unify these kind of regulations and simplify them. So we gave them the material with their help, of course, because they have good experience in putting up or putting putting together this kind of training materials. So now this is our contract. PIC booklet is our contract with you as an end user. So our inspectors study these books and we have discussions to make sure they have a uniform understanding of the regulations. So in essence, this booklet is extracting from our food code, which will be coming up soon. So we are just streamlining this by PIC, which requires all food facilities should have what we call person in charge certified by these guys, and these guys are certified by that, which is Dubai Accreditation Center for personal certification of these guys, in order to make sure they are well versed with food safety regulations, and they are our contact point with the food facility.
Great. Hopefully, this message will go across to all the end user suppliers. I'd like to have Lorraine's input from a flight kitchen perspective. Flight kitchen is something I've never seen. We only heard. We have food coming up from when we travel in an aircraft. I travel cattle car, which is economy. So basically, I take all the gravy. We don't get fine dining in economy, but for people who are privileged to travel in business and first class, probably have a different perspective. The food made by Emirates Flight Kitchen. Emirates Flight Kitchen is a winner of several awards. But to go with a bit, I'd like really Lorraine to actually touch about the entire food process, what happens in the Flight Kitchen. And then we can actually go into food preservation, food hygiene. So Lorraine, if you could please tell us.
I'd hate to burst your bubble. There are a number of business units within Emirates Flight Catering, and one of them is the manufacturing wing, and we focus on the economy meal. So it doesn't mean that if you're first class or business or economy, there's any difference in the level of food safety. I think very comfortably say that we've got some of the highest standards when it comes to food safety. We have to. You've got our end customer traveling 30,000 feet up in the air with limited facilities, either medical facilities or bathroom facilities if the very worst happens. But also if you potentially got the pilot affected, you can have a catastrophe. So you have to have those high standards. Now, Emirates Flight Catering, in its many guises, because we used to be a different company many years ago, 30 years ago, set up food safety standards. I think one of the first companies in this region about 30 years ago, so much before many of us even heard of food safety. why focus on the manufacturing wing? So I've had experience with the catering wing. What they do there is called cook chill. So they basically cook the product and blast chill it within very quickly after cooking it, so that we get it down to a chill temperature of 1 to 4 degrees. So keep it outside the danger zone. I'm sure Richard will have some clarification of danger zone down the line. But that's what happens in the flight catering, and within a certain amount of time from the blast chilling, it's put on board, reheated if applicable, or served to the passenger. With respect to food point, we do cook, chill, assemble, freeze. So the meal is frozen, it then goes to the catering unit, it's defrosted and put on board. It doesn't make it any less safe. I would, because I've had the experience in the frozen industry, say that sometimes frozen is fresher because it limits the shelf life of a product and makes sure that it doesn't have to go through 2 to 3 weeks, possibly like a fruit or vegetable at an ambient temperature or a chill temperature. Does that answer your question? Is that, would you like further information? What do you say? Events, yeah. So definitely Dubai municipality code is followed. We also follow the International Travel Catering Association standards and EU guidelines. We want to follow industry best practices. So sometimes, even though we follow Dubai municipality, it's one of the references. And with respect to food safety, we follow all of theirs, but with respect to microbial counts and verification standards, we have our own in-house standards, and they are very, very high because of the risk, the potential risk to our end consumer.
Okay, thanks Lauren for that input. I'd like to have Mr. Arichandan speak about his concerns regarding temperature measurements and temperature maintenance in his industry.
I'm going to say something about food point and learning. In terms of regulation, I think we're one of the few companies here who are very, very tough, and Lorraine being even more tough. And she's a personal friend of 20 years, but she doesn't give a damn about that. She makes sure that we deliver the product in the right temperature, and she has rejected no matter what it is.
That's very nice. In this business, I think there are no shortcuts. And with any business, especially in the food business, the results are very obvious if you actually take a shortcut. From an engineering point of view, it takes a long time for the shortcomings to be too much, as happened I would like to tell the Gulf of Mexico, the PPR spill, which was the shortcuts being taken. Just to prove a point, what Ravi said, that it's nice to know that people are self-regulating themselves to the extent that it's, very encouraging to know that. And this is what I think the municipalities, the message also goes across, that the best regulator is yourself. The awareness of following the rules and regulations. Everything looks good on paper. All the regulations, all the laws, but unless the laws are implemented and enforced and self-enforced, that would be the best thing. I'd like Ravi to mention.
There's no way that you can bypass their food point being rejected even for 1 degree more, which is sometimes I thought was ridiculous. But over the year, we have learned so much, and we have improved ourselves manifold, and we have never had a problem for exactly 18 months now, not a single one, and I'm sure Lorraine will watch for that. The issues that we face, and we had faced earlier, was about transportation, refrigerated transportation, reputed brand of vehicle, and to go to professional refrigeration companies in town. This is something that we have learned as well. And they are here today, our TSC and Thermo Galaxy, and they do a great job. So this is something that we learned and we like to pass on to others, that quality comes with a price. And if you do go for a cheaper one, you might have to end up losing business if you don't deliver products at the right temperature.
There was a health check once, I'm not sure, once in a year, I think, for a blood check and a X-ray for communicable disease, which is an excellent thing. because you know the person who's handling the food is who's actually bringing to the table, is again the weakest link. He would have everything else very good, but if the person is having some communicable disease, he would actually blame it on the food. So those standards are there, but what I'm talking about personnel who are actually aware and trained in these standards, you know. How many of us actually have people who do that? I can tell you for a fact that we learn the standards from the food inspectors who come from Dubai municipality and say, listen, you know, we need a separate wash basin for vegetables, we separate wash basin for, non-vegetarian food. This has to be stored separately. But those are very basic standards. Again, we'll touch upon that subject a bit later in terms of staff training. What George mentioned a while ago about reducing 300 watts per square meter to 120 watts touches upon a very important aspect of our business, which is energy conservation. I read an article in which I found that 50% of the energy consumption in the world is consumed by refrigeration business. And in this world of being green and environmentally sensitive, and of course making sense to the end user in terms of reduced energy costs, I think everybody's doing everybody a favor by reducing energy consumption. I will come to that a bit later on in the discussion. Energy conservation is going to be discussed at a much later stage. Yes, unfortunately, Noha Jassim, she's the maintenance manager from Spiri. She's had an operation with Vishal, and thank you for coming. And we'll continue with that discussion. The other item of the agenda is, what George mentioned is a marriage of engineering and refrigeration. From a personal perspective, I have found that one of the main culprits in the whole food chain is engineering, design and consultants. Are there any consultants here in the audience? We we have 85 convenience stores, and I can tell you for a fact that the mistake of the first store is still being repeated in the 85th. And that makes my job a bit, convincing, because they want me to fix all these problems. The bottom line is, consultants, at least in this part of the world, is all about cut and paste. Would everybody agree, or is there anybody who disagrees? As you can see, cut and paste is one of the most favorite things here. Mistakes are being repeated at a huge cost. My budget of refrigeration, 45% of my budget goes into compressor replacements. Again, that's a good thing for compressor supply companies, but not very good for us. I'd like you to touch upon the issue of design, as to how important is design into this. Would Mr. Samala to say?
I'm sorry, give the answer.
Yes, Mr. Raza.
And one more thing, I bring my Suraj is here. He is handling any hygienic problem. He is handling. He will be.
Please, yes, Suraj, if you would like to.
So for the first one, if I know my job, I have to go and see. Is the components, is the design, is the right design? Do I get the full performance from all the components? It's not just anything to come to the conclusion, or maybe I came with less power on the compressor or less horsepower. As I said, the normal market is the horsepower. I give them 5, and the other give them 4, the other one give them 6. And the value is only based on the power of the compressor. On the other hand, when the client comes and says, thank you very much, you give me a very good cold stop, which is working very fast, very good. Actually, I should feel shame from my side, because he asked for a cold room, or he asked for the chiller, or he asked for freezer. What I gave them in the place, it was a glass chiller or glass freezer, which is a high initial cost and high power consumption and very low performance. And in the long run, more breakdown, because when the unit is oversized, okay, it makes it safe for the supplier that plant the temperature very quick, but in the long run, due to the start-stop, and the system will not last long. One thing that just was I learned from the market, there should be some kind of organization, some kind of to control all this, at least for the industrial type of cold store, or for the commercial, which is like food processing, restaurant, chain restaurant, I don't know, like municipality to control it from initial beginning. Because unfortunately, there's not that much consultant in the market which they are aware of the refrigeration. As I said, it's mostly the cut and paste. They have some old specs, information, they make it as a tender and they release it in the market. Then whoever gives the lowest price is the vendor. It's not correct. As I can see, for example, myself will be controlling the air conditioning. They get involved with the design and they get involved with the performance of the unit, but unfortunately nothing in the refrigeration.
With everything that's been said. But from a food safety point of view, the design I would look at in probably three different areas. Well, one is the, as well as obviously how well it's built and how it can be cleaned and so on, but the location. Two particular issues about the location. I've heard colleagues tell me that people are putting in freezers and fridges that actually open into the external, not into the air conditioning, but to external. So when you open the door, you get a tremendous amount of warm air coming in. So that seems to me a major problem. The other one is in the location within the premises as to how close it is to the preparation area. Because if the refrigeration or the freezer is not close, particularly the refrigeration to the preparation area, people will tend not to use it, so they'll leave the food out rather than taking it back after it's been prepared. So there's two issues, I'm sure other people can add to that. So that's the location. The capacity, for me, the size of the unit to cope with the demand, not the average demand, but the maximum demand in terms of storage, particularly in the catering, again, catering establishments. That if you have a restaurant that has, let's say, 100 covers, then do you need the capacity for 100 covers? Well, how many times are those covers sold? 5 times during the day, 10 times during the day? So it's not a capacity for 100 meals, it's a capacity for 500 or 1,000 meals. Then you have to look at what are they actually serving outside the restaurant. Are they doing banquets for outside when they could do another 500 people? So when people are designing, are you taking in the maximum, not the minimum or the average, but the maximum usage to make sure that you can deal with it? In terms of performance, how is the unit going to be used? For instance, I've seen a lot of abuse of refrigeration when drink has been put in the refrigerator, which particularly raises temperature. So bring bottles of water that have been brought in from outside under no refrigeration, very large amounts of lemonade, some Coca-Cola and water, put into a refrigerator, carbonated Coke. What happens if you put warm food or even hot food in the refrigerator? What will happen? Can it cope or not? Because there are times when hot food and warm food, regardless of the fact that we would all like blast chillers before food is put in practice, what happens and what will can the unit cope? And the final thing is the contingency. I put this in design, contingency. Any equipment that we've got, one thing you can be sure about is it's going to break down. Sometime. Cheap equipment may break down every 5 minutes. Good equipment might last for 10 years, but at one time it's going to break down. And as the unit, one of the things I always ask as an enforcement officer is, what are your contingency plans? How do you respond if it breaks down? What are you going to do with food? How soon can you get it repaired? What is the alternatives? So those are just some of the things that I would look at when I was considering design, which is outside the mechanics, which the engineers have talked about.
Now, when you talk about design or consultants, the problem in Kuwait, the problem in the area, it's reflected in the discussion. We run to the refrigeration system. But the fact, before we go to the refrigeration system, let's take a warehouse or cold stores, okay? There you have to think first about designing the cold stores in terms of docking, receiving, marching, handling area, and then the size of the chamber or the room correctly, decide on how we're going to do order, pickup, all of these things. And then later on will come the refrigeration. We have the same problem, I can't speak of Kuwait, of course. Always they go directly to the contractor or manufacturer of panels or whatever, and they tell them, I need a cold store. And most of them look alike. They do similar to the other cold stores, and all the focus is done on a compressor. Okay? So therefore, what we like here, the concept that this cold store has to meet the requirement of the customer. What type of cold store it is? Is it a public warehouse, or is it specialized, or is it integrated with processing? And so therefore, what we have here is a problem in that kind of how do we start the project. Thank you very much.
We have, again, poor designs, which later are affected, where we do not fix the right refrigeration equipment in the right place. And we suffer and we pay extra. That's something. And Richard had mentioned that contingency plans, or we call it crisis management plan. What is plan B? What if all your refrigeration breaks down because of a trip or something went wrong on electrical circuit, something like that? You are going to lose and waste all the products. It's going to be delayed. You're going to lose customers, and there's going to be a huge loss. How many of them in this room have a plan B, a contingency plan? Where would they go for refrigeration? Are they going to hire from a local company a refrigeration container and store immediately? Do they have it in place to call them immediately to bring the container, transport, and all those things? It's something that I want to discuss, because passed through that stage and it was hell.
Yeah, I agree, Ravi. It's well, discomforting and discomforting at the same time to know that everybody's got the same problems. So, having said that, yes, come back in a sec after I come back. Ravi, when you find that you have been sold the wrong design, when you actually go for the expansion of your facilities in new line businesses, do you actually then sit down with your consultant and input your experience into the new design?
From the mistakes learned, we certainly sit with a professional consultant, show them what has happened in the past, and now when we go for expansion, certainly we look into the right equipment, the right design, and move forward.
Well, this is where the key is, I think. You need to have the end user participation and not only leave it to the so-called experts in the field to actually sell your product. And this is where it's very important that you as a customer actually sit down with the consultant and actually give it. Lauren, you want
I'd like to see who they've done in the past, which other factories or companies established and then installed, and then go and visit them and talk to them and see how it is, and not some newcomer in the market.
See, as a gentleman mentioned from Kuwait, when somebody says, let's make a cold store, well, he makes a cold store and he learns from the mistakes on the way. So next time he actually wants to make another cold store, he doesn't call a contractor and say, make a cold store. He actually sets down the specifications and says, I want this done this way based on my experience. So this is where I think Ravi, the end user involvement. Before I come back to you, George, Lorraine, a quick word because somebody else wants to say something.
As you know, the cold chain management is the prime responsibility in food safety. I'd like to know whether from the manufacturer's point, on the production point, to the receiving point in Dubai, is the temperature that is being maintained, has been recorded, and that we have the record for that?
Make sure that during transportation the food is kept at the right temperature. So in essence, yes, it is in the law, but the implementation side of it, I mean, it's not as we wish to have, but it is there.
Yeah, thank you. And I must appreciate the Dubai municipality. I am here in this region for quite a long time and in the same refrigeration field. And year by year, the Dubai municipality has been quite rigid with their checking what the temperature controls with the vehicles, and that's up to, it's very good of them to enforce that sort of regulations. But at the same time, being a service provider, there are certain criteria we need to consider when we provide a service to a client. For instance, a client calls saying, I want a freezer. There are certain things we need to ask the client. So we go about inquiring first the client, what is his requirement? That is very important. What is the mode of operation? What is the product that he is going to load? Sometimes a client is not aware of, is ignorant of certain fact, which we as service provider guide them as what to do and what temperature they should go, what type of equipment they should have. Sometimes the price is not a factor in buying an equipment. It is the product that matters. We don't sell price, it is the product we sell. So as a result, we ask the client the type of operation, whether what's the frequency of his deliveries, how does he deliver, what is the product he's going to load in. So based on these factors, we come to a conclusion and we advise him, okay, you need to have certain units, certain size of unit, a box, and then there it goes. And we as Thermo King has always been quality conscious, and to maintain the cold chain management, especially in the trucks, we have now come up with a very small unit, but very, very important unit.
I'd like to, we talk about Kyoto Protocol. It's actually one of the topics of discussion much later on. Yes, we are aware of the Kyoto Protocol, but I'd like to introduce Kyoto Protocol not only in terms of the natural beverages that are being used, but also in terms of mandatory compliance from the local authorities for replacement of equipment using HFCs and other environmentally damaging gas. We'll come to that as a huge subject, which I don't think businesses are actually prepared for that, and we will need actually input from the authorities into the implementation of the Kyoto Protocol. To answer George, I know that somebody in Kuwait, and I cannot mention that, they have been using propane gas as a natural refrigerant in their application. So yes, the awareness is there about using natural refrigerants, and it's really nice to know that people care about the environment. I mean, this is not, I cannot reveal the name of the company or the institution, but this institution cannot be regulated. But they are doing a sort of a self-regulation, which is good. About what Thermo King mentioned, people come to them asking for advice, and they sell the product on the price, and they actually educate the product. Honestly, personally speaking, this is not the job of the supplier. This is the job of the consultant. And it really comes to the bottom line that there are no refrigeration consultants, professional refrigeration consultants in the market today. And actually, if you actually want to design a supermarket, you will go to a design person. You will not even go to a MEP consultant. The MEP consultant or the MEP engineer is a subset or of the design person. It's actually very important for supermarkets to look good. For some people, it's probably a part of branding. You know, for us, branding is very important. Coming from Emirat, you know, we have the same brand and we cannot change the logo and so on. I can tell you personally, refrigeration is just another box in the drawing. It's a display freezer to be kept, as what Richard mentioned. There's no regard to where the food is made, prepared, stored. It's just something that needs to be kept someplace. It's a big challenge actually, and it actually underlines the fact that there is a lack of professional refrigeration engineers. I'd like to give you a chance to speak. Again, contingency. Very, very important. Ravi mentioned contingency, and his business is very important as a food manufacturer, not to lose product, downtime. He cannot afford to have anything lost. How many of us are actually prepared for contingency? And how many of us are actually prepared to pay the cost for contingency? I'll leave some questions to the audience.
My name is Firas Abdin from Jordan, from Abdin Invest Establishment, specialized in manufacturing display cabinets for supermarkets and supply as well. I would like to point out on some point we discussed about, for example, sizing a compressor. As people come to us, they want to call to a cabinet with a 5 horsepower compressor, let's say. Our part is educating our customers. In our part of the world, most of our customers are not educated about refrigeration. So our duty, especially our company, before we give a quote to the customer, we educate the customer and don't teach him that this is correct or it's incorrect what he's asking for. I would like to point out our energy optimizing solutions. Of course, energy is very important, and for being a cabinet manufacturer, every manufacturer can supply energy optimizing solution. Is the point where the customer pay for such solutions, because such will increase the price of the supermarket or the project itself. Of course, we as a big company, we always speak of energy optimizing solution, and we were able to convince 2 big customers in Jordan to install such systems, and we were able to save up to 30% of energy in one hypermarket and in one supermarket. So this is coming soon to our part of the world, but what's stopping is energy. It's not so expensive as in Europe. So we tell the customer, you have a payback period of 5 years. They will say, no, I need a traditional system. This 5 years too long for me to get my money back. Well, in Europe, it's 2 to 3 years, and the money can be paid back of the investment. Not coming to the natural gases, which our friend George mentioned, natural gases. Natural gases, it is possible to use, but it's the problem that maybe it's not implemented in our part of the world, because most of our technicians, they do not know anything about this technology and how to maintain it and to look after it. So people in this period is still using traditional systems, unless we find a way to educate the people of this area, of this world, on natural gas and how to